Welcome back, everybody. We have a great project here, a bit of Canadiana. This is a Gilson office chair or a school chair. It's an oak chair, and it was built in Guelph, Ontario. Gilson started in 1906 in Guelph, and they also had their own foundry as well. So the mechanical parts of this chair, not those wheels. We're changing those wheels out. They're pretty gross. But the mechanical parts of the chair are really solid cast, so we'll be spending some time cleaning them up and restoring them and getting them back. As you can see, the chair is in pretty bad shape. It was left out in the weather, and the seat came apart. So we'll be taking the seat apart and re-gluing the seat, and we'll be doing a full restoration on the chair. So stay tuned and watch this project. And this is a beautiful chair, and it needs some time and respect. And as usual, we're trying to save it as an antique. We're not trying to scrub it all off and get it looking brand new. We want it to still look the age that it is. As you can see, it has some, it's been battered. Somebody has gotten on to different parts of the chair and has added some varnish to it. So we're going to have to use some paint stripper to remove that. Other parts of the chair, the bottom of the legs and everything, I've done a test on them, and they're just a shellac. So we'll be using alcohol to remove the shellac. So there it stands, and we'll start our restoration project. First thing we'll have to do is give it a good clean and take all the parts apart. So here we are taking everything apart. And you may think this is a newer chair because of the screws holding the seat down are a Robertson screw. And oddly enough, Robertson screws came out in 1906 as well. And they're actually in the same area as Gilson. Gilson was producing their products in Guelph, Ontario, and I don't think that the Robertson plant was very far away, but they both came into existence in 1906. So here I am taking the pivots out for the casters that were on it. You can see the reason they've changed it, and they've changed their holes as well. So these actually take a little bit of work, and the best thing is just a pair of vice grips on them and pound them out and get them out. And then we'll be filling those holes with dowels and epoxy and going back to the original holes. And I'll be showing you how we set that later. So we'll just continue through here and take all these out. They are a bear to get out. The best way is with a vice grip. They've glued them in. They made the holes oversized. So. This is after taking off the metal plate that was on the bottom, and you can see the cast iron spindle that comes through the bottom of the chair, and they have dovetails in it. So they've dovetailed the wooden legs into the cast. Just an incredible amount of steel in it. These chairs were built to last. Most of them went into offices, industrial offices, and schools. And they're built to last the time and the years. So here we've taken the seat off and taken apart the seat bases, and we'll clean them all up. And I'm just trying to pry the third one off. What we'll end up doing is using some steam to get those apart, and then we'll clean up the joints and re-glue them together again. Here I am just taking the spindle off the top of the chair, and you can see the casting again. So there's a spindle bell on top of it, and there's a little set screw. So if you're taking a chair apart like this, there's a little set screw that allows you to back it away from the spindle. Just giving it a shot of WD-40 there to loosen it up, and you bring that up as high as you can. They don't give you a whole lot of room, and once we get that up, we can just loosen that up, and then there we go. We've got the screw out, and we'll just take the spindle out of the leg section, and then we can take apart the rest of the mechanical parts and put them in for cleaning and painting. As you can see, though, the forged parts were really solid. There's our adjustment spindle for the height. So what the yoke does and the set screw, as you loosen up the set screw, you can set the height and it'll stay in that. So years and years of grease, and the keyway there has got to be cleaned out. And we'll just slide that out and get it over to the cleaning bench. On the back of the chair, they had some bolts that were, what they do is that they put a small notch in them and they spread the bolts apart, almost like a lock washer. So what I had to do is just grind them off so we can pull the bolts through. And then two of the other bolts were actually carriage bolts, and we weren't able to loosen them up. So what I do is I just take a grinder with a zip wheel on it, and we just cut a slot in the head of the carriage bolt, the smooth head bolt, and then we can put a screwdriver in it and hold it while we turn off the nut. Here's the back adjustments, and there's the carriage bolts I was just telling you about. So we weren't able to move them, so what I do is just cut a slot in them, and then you can just use a normal flathead screwdriver to hold that as you back out the nut. Now that we have all the components apart, we'll be giving them a wash down. I just use a Dawn dish soap, not a lot. I'll be giving them a wash with that, getting them all cleaned up. And then after we get them sanded, I notice that there's actually quite a smell of mildew on them. So after we get them washed up and stripped down, we'll be giving them a wash with a mild acid, a vinegar wash. And the vinegar will take out any of the mildew smell. So you can see all the components I've got there. And I put all the screws in a container there so that we don't lose any of them. And here I am just putting a wet cloth over the joint, and what we do is we put some water on top of that, and then I'll use an iron on top of that, and what the iron will do will steam that joint and get us apart with this. If it was put together with hide glue, this should bring it apart, but if somebody else has gotten to it and have used a different kind of glue, it won't come apart. But I was able to get it apart. And what we do is just lay a cloth or a piece of paper down, saturate it with water, and just go over it with your iron, and that'll bring it apart. Here I am just giving them a second wash. I've already washed them once, and I'll go over them again and give them a wash. And then what I do is I use a clear wash, just clear water, because I don't want to sand any of the soap into the wood that may affect the finish that's going on top of it. So I'll always use clean water to clean up everything, and that's what I'm doing now. It's just giving it a wash, and then I'll inspect it, and then we'll start to strip off the varnishes and the shellac. Here you can see that we have the seated part, and what they have is a small a channel in the seat surfaces. So I found the best thing to do is we use heavy-duty snap-off blades, and you can just scrape the glue off that way. So we're just cleaning it up and scraping it all off, and the same on the other side. So this is the male side, and we'll just take all that and glue right off. As you can see, that was a hide glue that was on there. We'll just take all that out and make sure. So we have all the seat panels apart, and what I'll be doing is gluing them back together. What I'll be using is Type on 3 to glue them together. The reason I use this is because it's going on a seat, and it's quite pliable. Yeah, if the seat wants to move a bit, it'll move around with it. So, and it gives us a little bit more setting time as well too. But it's the glue that we like to use on our restoration projects. Let me just get all this all glued up, and I glue both surfaces, and we'll put them together. Now that we have them all glued up and put together, just give it a wipe off, and time to call it a night. And then we'll let this set overnight, and then we can get back in the morning. I don't do any stripping or removal of any of the material until we have all the seat together, so we'll be taking that apart tomorrow. And this top portion of the seat I'll be removing with denatured alcohol, and but on the upper portion of the seat we'll have to use paint thinner stripper on it. Somebody's varnished that on the backrest. So, and here I am just adding another brace to pull it in tight. But after all these years, those joints still go together pretty tight. So we just get this together and let it sit overnight, and then tomorrow we'll get back at her. And here we are. So I've decided I've given it a wash with alcohol and wiped it off, but there's still some parts on it that won't come off. So what we're going to use is some paint stripper on it, and we'll just coat that again and give it a scrub off. What I use is a piece of steel wool after it's had a chance to saturate into it. I'm careful not to take all the color out of it. What I'm doing is just trying to remove the top surface that it's on. And I like to use a scrub brush, so I'll just scrub that off and then give it a wipe. As you can see, it's coming off quite nicely. Once we get this all scrubbed off, and we're back to the legs, and we'll do the same thing. They all have to be cleaned up. And then once we get this all coated on, we'll just give it a brush off. And then I'll get to the point of sanding. And then we'll look for any cracks or anything that has to be fixed before we get to the final sand. What I'm doing now is just giving it a good wipe with vinegar, and all the way around on the backside and everything. And this is straight vinegar. What I'm using is pickling vinegar. It's a little bit higher in acid, so it'll cut the smell. It should get rid of any of the black that's in the wood as well. So all the wood parts will coat out and give it a saturation and a good wipe and let it dry before we go into sanding and any repairs that need to be done. The biggest thing with a lot of these projects is just give the furniture a really good clean. And I wipe them all down with vinegar. I like to give them a nice clean smell and get rid of any of the bacteria. You see how it's nice and bright now. Now I'm just using the edge of a blade again, an industrial blade, and I'll scrape off any of the residue that was left on the legs. And what that is shellac, the original shellac that was used on the legs. So I'll go all the way along and just give that a scrape and a clean. As you can see it coming off the blade quite nicely. Now that everything is dried, you can see the wood grain and stuff. You'll notice the different colors in it. So what I'll do is give everything a quick sand with. I start with 120. I don't like starting below 120. So I'll go with a 120 sandpaper, sand that off, and then I'll go right up to 220 through the grits. You can see where I've had to put a small a piece of wood in on the seat there, right in the center. So I just laid in a small bit of oak and glue in there. And then what we do is continue to sand. I find that these fine tools, they've got a really good sanding pad to them that you can follow the contours quite well. So we'll do that, and I only use mechanical sanding up to 180, and then at that point, then we just sand by hand. So all the sanding's all done, and I've noticed the variations in the color of the wood. So what I'll be using is a pre-stained wood conditioner. And what this will allow me to do is to put a light stain coat on it, and it'll take any blotches or anything out of it. And at this point too, when I'm wiping it on, if there's any finish that was left on any of the pieces and everything, they'll be noted as well. And then I can go back to scraping them or sanding them. But what this will do will highlight any of the spots that won't take penetration. And so we'll wipe everything down, and then after everything gets saturated, and then in about 15 minutes we'll give everything a stain. What I'm using is a Danish walnut. It's a nice dark stain on this oak. So it's an oil-based stain. So we'll be oiling it, and the only real repair that I had on it was the spreader on the upper part of the back press there. I spread that apart with a clamp and just shot in a little bit of glue and glued it together. It seemed to have a little bit of movement in it, but the rest of the chair was in excellent condition, other than the seat and all the hardware being seized. I'm really happy with the product and the way it's coming out. Well-built chair. It was built for generations, so after we're done with it, it should go on for a little bit longer. Now that the pre-stain has had a chance to soak in for about 15 minutes, we'll be adding the oil stain. What I do is I make a blotching pad, like a dubbing, and I have a wool sock. And what I do is just put some of these cotton swabs inside the sock, and plus I use them to apply the oil as well. I believe they're a makeup swab, but they work really good in this application for me. And there's our dabber. Well, like I said, on the inside of the dabber we have a cotton, and I just pull that tight, and I work that the stain into the wood. And on oak, you always want to go back and forth, and that's so that you can get into the pores. Oak has a lot of big open grain in it, so you want to go back and forth and around and get it all into it. And then I'll leave it overnight and then come back in the morning. And a lot of times people will put on oil on their oak, and they'll come back the next day and they'll see puddles of it coming out. That's called bleeding, where the wood will actually push the stain back out of it. But there's one coat. I'll be giving it 2 coats. And this again, and after I'm done coating everything, I'll check all the pieces to see if there's anything that was missed, or if there's any flat areas. When the oil goes on, any of the areas that we didn't get the finish off of, any of the finishes that have been used over the years, it'll be quite noticeable. So then we'll scrape it back and restain that area. But everything's coming out good so far. So we'll just continue to stain that. And like I said, this will get 2 coats a day apart, and then we'll wipe it all down, and then continue with the top coat. And here we are on the second day, just giving everything a second coat. And what I like to do is apply with a bit of steel wool, and we use 4/0. So I have some oil on that, and I'll just wipe down all the surfaces, and then give it a buff with a cloth, and then let it dry overnight again. And here I am just doing some touch-ups on it. So there are some flat spots at the bottom of these spindles on the backrest where they went in, and you can see the color coming through. So what I do is I just use a Q-tip, and then I'll get in there and I'll just dab all that areas and all the way around, and then we can give that a wipe off. And I'll check all the components to make sure that everything was covered, and then we'll give it all a clean wipe. Here we are with all the components, and everything has been oiled, and it's been 2 days on them. And now we'll put a top coat. What I've decided to do, I want this grain to come through, so I'll be using a brie wax. And what I've gone with is a dark walnut. And this will get 2 coats of wax, and then we'll buff the final coat. And what I use is a natural buffing bristle. There's all the back's done. So, and there's our... So this is, we skip to the next day, and the wax has had a chance to set up and in. And what we'll do is we'll just buff everything out. So this has had 2 coats of wax on it. It's been wiped down, and now what we're doing is just buffing it. And this is a natural China bristle buffing wheel. You can see the sheen that it gives this wax. It's just such a natural feel to it. I can't really describe the feel of the wood, but there's such a natural feel to it, and the shine is brilliant. So we'll just continue doing all our pieces, and then we'll start on the assembly. Just showing you the chair there. So that's all been buffed out. Good luck to anybody trying to stay on that. Yeah, Bree makes a beautiful furniture polish. And if you don't have one of these China bristle polishers, get one. So here's the finished product. We've changed the wheels on it, and we've ordered some antique brass wheels for the bottom of it, and you can see the sheen on it. We've got it all back together, and all the hardware has been painted. And I hope the Gilson's family is happy with this product. It's a well-built chair. The Gilson office chair from Guelph, Ontario. So this will be seen in our home office. It sort of matches the decor. Well, thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and you've got some information that you'll be able to use in your future projects. Please subscribe and let us know if you like this, and we're going to continue on and do some more projects and bring them to you. Thanks for watching.